And there we go.
Thank you. Well, welcome to our contemplative time in the service. I will do a reading. This is 2 small readings followed by a time of silence, and then Jackson will sing, and then I will follow that with a treatment. So I invite you now to get comfortable. Close your eyes or just lower your gaze. Breathe in deeply and then let go. Feel yourself settle into your deeper self. The first reading is from the book Change We Must by Nana Vieri. When you have an idea, it's not your idea. These ideas are all from the infinite intelligence that floats around in the ether here. These ideas are all there, and it is up to you to reach out. The second reading is from The Great Adventure by Emmett Fox. When you are in difficulties, look upon the overcoming of them as a great adventure. Approach the problems as though you were an explorer seeking a path, or an Edison working to overcome difficulties in connection with a new invention. You know that there is a way out of any difficulty whatever, no matter what it may be, through the changing of your own consciousness by prayer. You know that by thus raising your consciousness, any conceivable form of good that you can desire will be yours. And you know that nobody else can by any means hinder you from doing this when you really want to do it. Relatives, customers, employers, the government, bad times, so-called, nothing can hinder you from the rebuilding of your own consciousness. And this rebuilding is the great adventure.
The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. I want to love you more. I want to love you more. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you.
Loving you, feeling the love, the great adventure of life is being lived by us all, knowing that in the ether all around us are beautiful, wonderful ideas waiting for us to call them forth and draw upon them, allowing our life to be more loving, more joyful, more healthy, strong, rich, and fruitful in every direction. How grateful I am for this service, our beautiful minister, Reverend Angelica, and for the unfolding of this service and this teaching today and in our lives, bringing us to greater, more wonderful life adventures for us all. This is a truth. Thank you, God. And so it is.
The greatest thing in all my life is serving you. The greatest thing in all my life is serving you. I want to serve you more. I want to serve you more. The greatest thing in all my life is serving you.
Thank you very much, Katherine and Jackson. So my talk this morning, in this theme we're going on this month, this Holy Uprising, today's talk is This Adventure Called Life. And you know, I love this idea of life as being an adventure. Instead of something that we have to experience the bad and the good, you know, the have to kind of things. I don't like that. I like the idea of it being an adventure. And as I wrote in my message for the month's newsletter, as a spiritual organization, a leading edge spiritual organization, CSL has a teaching and we have the tools to take humanity into the next level of consciousness, a new paradigm of consciousness. We've been talking about this already. What is this new paradigm going to be like? And you know, it starts with each one of us. It absolutely starts with each one of us. And so we have to look at what is it that we want? What do we want to experience as we move into this new paradigm? I'm hoping, or knowing rather, that the new paradigm is kindness and compassion, where we really pay attention to each other as brothers and sisters. And there's nothing to judge, there's only life itself. And so as we do this in our lives, then we also do it in our center. We do it in our larger communities, in Eureka and the surrounding areas, and we do it in the world. And to do so, we have to rise up. We have to raise our own consciousness. And we're, you know, when I said, you know, our community, Eureka, I must add Alaska and Hawaii and, you know, all the different places, Washington and Utah and all the places that we're touching as well, that each one of us is created or is already expressing in consciousness in everything that we do. And I see it as like we're all individualized aspects of this one that's radiating outward. And it's radiating first through our circles of influence and then into we have an effect on other people and then their circles of influence, etc. And it just keeps radiating outwards. I remember a friend of mine one day, I had talked something about, you know, throwing a thought into the pond of consciousness and how it rippled out. And we were walking through this park that had a big lake in it. This was in Hawaii. And so I thought, wow, you know, I'm going to really look and see what this looks like. And I picked up this rock and I threw it in, and so did my friend Louise. And we watched as each one of our rocks set up a pattern of ripples, and they touched each other. Her ripples touched my ripples and created some more ripples. And the one thing that I really thought was so neat was that it went all the way to the edge of the pond. And when it got to the shores of the pond, it turned around and went back to the center. And that is a really important idea, that all of this energy we're radiating out always comes back to the center. And what is the center? The center is God. Absolutely God. So this adventure called life, you know how I love words. The etymology of adventure comes from a Latin word meaning about to happen. So an adventure is about to happen. And so for me, right now, all of us can get really excited. I know we've spent a year possibly being afraid, lonely. You know, we've probably gone through this whole panoply of emotions, living in shelter in place and not being able to see each other. But now let's get into a place where we get excited about something that's about to happen. I also realized that the current idea of adventure in the collective consciousness includes travel. It's exciting. It includes risk, chance, and possible danger. And that made me think of that. Where is it that we're feeling danger in anything? So I had these questions. Actually, these were my journal questions. Where am I allowing this one life to show up? Where am I allowing God to show up? And where am I taking sacred risks to evolve? Now, when I think about a sacred risk, I think of every time I've moved from one church to another, that's been a sacred risk. It's actually been something that I felt like it wasn't really a choice, that something was pushing me to move into this next evolvement of my life. But if it was definitely, for me, a sacred risk is a risk that you take that where you trust. You just absolutely trust. Every time I moved, I didn't really know anybody in those new areas I was moving to. When I moved from Hawaii to Vancouver, Canada, I met one person actually and she happened to be an animal person, and she was the minister of the Vancouver church. And when she decided to retire, she said she was going to retire in a year. And I said to her, I'd like to try that church. Well, I got a phone call about 3 months later, and she says, I'm retiring now. Do you want it? And boy, all the stuff that went through my mind. I mean, my church in Hawaii was successful. You know, I wanted Tag and I, my husband, who was also the co-pastor at the time, you know, to move and do this new thing. And I talked to him about it, and he didn't want to. And still, there was something that was pushing me to go. And I felt like I didn't have a choice. But it was a sacred risk, and it turned out really good. So another thing to ask yourself is, where and how often are you taking chances or stepping into opportunities to let spiritual magnificence be your experience? Now, you don't have to be a minister or a practitioner to let spiritual magnificence be your experience. I look at the work of Louise or Marianne, their artistry, and I think, wow, you know, their spiritual magnificence is being expressed. Scott mentioned Cherie and her cooking for us. That is definitely her spiritual magnificence being expressed. The voices of Donna and Pamela and the choir and all the people that sing, and Jackson who plays the piano and sings, etc., are musicians. That's their spiritual magnificence. But ask yourself, are you doing it safely, or are you stepping out and taking chances? So I have 3 questions for you in this idea. My first question is, where's the risk? Where's the risk in your life? Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And in this spiritual life that we're living, There are so many opportunities and so many avenues that we can follow. In fact, when I think about this idea of the adventure called life, I remember in one of Dr. Holmes's radio shows, he said that God is our adventure, and that this journey involves an expanded awareness in life. And from the human point of view, we think that having that expanded experience is risky. But if we're really relying on the idea of oneness and trusting and then actively participating, that adventure unfolds perfectly. In fact, like I was having, you have a divine urge that is calling you or even pushing you into your greater yet to be. So, moving into a new job feels really risky. Moving to a new city or into a new home in the same city. There are so many things that make us feel like we're taking a risk. And yet if we're centered, we don't feel that risk anymore. I don't know, in the moves that I've had, which has been from Hawaii to Vancouver, Vancouver to Baltimore, and Baltimore to here, everybody tells me, oh, you're so brave to go where you don't know anybody, etc. But I never felt like it was brave. It was the next thing to do. Was it risky? Did I feel like it might have been a risk? Well, of course. What if they don't like me? That kind of thing. But in each experience, it's turned out better than I thought it would turn out. So in other words, if there's only this one thing, remember we say there's only one life, that life is God's life, that life is the life we are living right now. So if there's only this one thing, which is also intelligence coming into form, one creative intelligence, source and substance that's found in absolutely everything, then what's there to fear? If we really trust that, what is there to fear? Science today is proving that the universe responds to us. It's responding to how we're thinking and we're feeling. And in fact, I think it responds to us more to how we feel than how we think. So we're creating our human experience. We're spiritual beings creating a human experience. And with all the emotions and everything that goes along with being human. And so sometimes we hold back from new experiences because we fear failure. But when we think about it, the biggest risk is not doing what we're being impelled to do, not opening to the infinite possibilities that are ours. So find God in absolutely everything. That's the biggest adventure. So my next idea is to say yes to every opportunity. Thomas Berry said a long time ago, the great work now as we move into a new millennium, or the new paradigm that we're moving into now, is to carry out the transition from a period of human devastation of the earth to a period when humans would be present to the planet in a mutually beneficial manner. When sitting there looking at all the people who were buying plants and looking at all those plants yesterday made me realize that those tables were filled with pots of God. Everything is divine. Everything is divine energy. And over this past year, when humans have had to be indoors more than ever before, nature has just flourished tremendously. I think that nature was really happy that we weren't around as much as we have been. So saying yes to every opportunity, there's so many opportunities we have. We have opportunities to realize that nature is life, the life itself, and to pay attention. You know, we think that nature is about ziplining on some really amazing getting that adrenaline rush from ziplining someplace, or it's deep sea diving, or for me it would be an African wildlife adventure. You know, and adventure is all of that, but the real adventure is the inner adventure, finding God within ourselves, within nature, within human events, within everything. And so what could that look like on an individual level? I think I know I've told this story before, but I watched this video one time. Somebody had taken some things out of the trash can in a food court in a mall, and they had set them on the floor around the trash can. And then they sat and watched and waited and filmed it. And all these people just kept passing by this trash on the floor. And it seemed like for them that they were going to end this experiment without a good result. Until finally somebody came over to put their trash in the trash barrel and noticed the things on the floor and picked those up too. And, suddenly all the people that were participating in this experience jumped up from their chairs or whatever, and they cheered the person, gave them kudos for picking up the trash on the floor. And I remember that after seeing that little video, that every time I picked anything up, whether it was on the street or wherever it might be, I wanted to look around and go, where's the people cheering me? And then I thought, oh, wow, I only want to do this to get acclaim, to get attention? That's not right. The truth of us is that we have to give ourselves the acclaim and the attention. The truth of us is we also have to be willing to do things like that, like when we're out on a walk, pick up the trash, just because we want to live on our planet in a mutually beneficial manner. One of the things that I think about when I think about saying yes to every opportunity is what we're really doing is saying yes to every holy opportunity. We're making it holy, Holy, holy. And all life is sacred if we let it be so. Think about it. If we really treated everything and everyone as if it was sacred, how wonderful that would be. To feel that mutually beneficial manner of living on the land. We can learn a lot from the Native American peoples. Up in Canada, they were called First Nations. And I made friends with some tribal people up there and brought some in to teach. One happened to be a really good musician. And he also did circles and taught about living in a place of honoring the land. So, when we drive our cars, when we're buying things that have so much plastic in them, it's time to really begin to pay attention to how we're using our resources. So say yes to those opportunities as well as all the other ones that come up. What I'm knowing is that this adventure called life begins and ends in consciousness. And every day we have the opportunity to find the divine in a new way. Whether it's being nicer to Mother Nature, whether it's experiencing our adventures in a new way, however you do it better. My third idea is from Ernest Holmes. We can no more do without spirituality than we can do without food, shelter, or clothing. And so my third idea is practice conscious participation. Those of you who were volunteering at the plant sale yesterday, that's what you were doing, was practicing conscious participation. If you're volunteering out in the community, that's practicing conscious participation. We can practice more conscious participation in our family settings. And we can do it by realizing that everything is God. You know, way before Ernest Holmes, the Vedic teachings said, I am the universe. And then Ernest Holmes came along and wrote our Declaration of Principles, saying that the universe is creatively and intelligently evolving. And that process is the process that we're participating in. So we might as well do it as consciously as we can. In fact, I might even say that the process of creative and intelligent evolution is our process. It's alignment, receptivity, and participation. Alignment with the One, constantly remembering this too is God. Everything we look at, this too is God. In fact, I'm looking at my dining room table, which is my desk at the moment, and I've been berating myself for not putting things where they belong. I have little piles of papers and books and things that I've been working on, and I've been berating myself about not cleaning up this dining room table. And yet, this too is God. And maybe if I approached it in the realization that every single piece of paper on my desk is sacred, because that too is God, then it might not be such a chore. So the physical universe, which is what we are and what we're creating and what nature is creating, etc., is this one infinite reality. And it's ever evolving into greater and greater and greater expression. So as we allow ourselves to remember this, that the universe is living, there's only one life, this life is God's life, and this life is the life that we're living. If we allow ourselves to remember that, just like Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Spirit of the universe, you've seen God. When I look at you, I see the Spirit of God. If we realize that one infinite reality and allow ourselves to engage more in life, experience more life, step up and out with a sense of dedication and a sense of consecration as divine expression, then we practice conscious participation. So this is what I want you to do this week. I want to investigate the ways you hold yourself back from life. Where are you being afraid? I know for me, sometimes people say really nice things to me, and there's a part of me that wants to say, oh, well, I'm just one of everybody. I'm just like everybody else. I want to deny that perhaps that I have a great consciousness or something, you know? And so I need to not hold myself back from life, and that's life with a capital L. So all of us need to uncover our fears. Where are we afraid to fail? Where are we afraid to look ridiculous? You know, I'm realizing it's kind of fun to look ridiculous sometimes. Or sometimes I realize I say something and people laugh, but in the back of my mind I hear my mother saying, you know, think and count to 10 before you open your mouth. So what I want us to do as we're doing this introspection is to reorient ourselves to this idea that we're living a divine life. Spend time in silence and listen. This is one of the greatest adventures I've ever had. When I go into meditation, sometimes I think of the most amazing things. It's so much fun. And when you do all these things, allow yourself to step out into your spiritual magnificence, because each one of us has to realize that if all there is God, if all there is spirit or the divine or whatever word we wish to use, then that's who we are. And so when we step out into our spiritual magnificence with enthusiastic participation, how wonderful life will be. And when we do this work out in the world, not just in meditation, then we magnify the effects. So let's begin this now. In CSL's Global Vision, the Center for Spiritual Living is what CSL stands for, in case you need reminding or you're new. In the Global Vision, it says, we see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with his or her highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. This, for me, is the grand adventure. This adventure called life. This is, I think, what this whole past year has been about, is getting to a place where we realize that we're being called to a higher state of consciousness and a more compassionate feeling when we have action out in the world. So let's say this affirmation together. I open myself up to this adventure called life, letting Spirit guide me along my way to perfect adventure, creativity, and connection. And let's go into prayer. With a grateful heart, I celebrate all that God is. And I know that when I say that, all that God is, I realize there is no spot where God is not. So the chair that I'm sitting on is divine energy. The air that I'm breathing is divine energy. That higher self of me is divine energy. It's not God and me, but God as me. And so now, today, I declare, and I speak this in the first person for all of us to make it easier to embody, I declare that I'm ready and willing to accept my spiritual magnificence. I'm ready and willing to realize that everything I do is sacred. Everything I do is holy. And so I let myself experience my whole life as a sacred adventure. Whether it be doing the laundry or the dishes or the common day chores, whether it be taking my dog for a walk or visiting with friends when possible, whether it be going to work or even sitting and watching a TV show. It's all an activity of the divine. And so I declare right now that I am ready and willing to make my life sacred, to participate in conscious activities where I see and I experience and I feel the divinity that is absolutely everywhere. And I know that one of God's names is love. So I choose right now not only to be the receiver of that divine love, I know consciously now that I am the beloved of God, but I'm also the one that gets to share that love out into the universe, that divine love. And I do that with compassion and with kindness. And sometimes it looks like tough love, but it's divine love, a great love. So with a grateful heart, I acknowledge that the me that I am is much more than I ever thought it could be. And I acknowledge and declare that I am ready and willing to step out and experience my spiritual magnificence. And as I do so, I see it absolutely everywhere in the eyes of the people that I meet, that I know. I see it in nature. It shows up everywhere. And what I also know is that as I allow myself to acknowledge the divine, acknowledge God in all of its radiance, I get love notes from the universe. And they are good, very good. So with a grateful heart, I release these words, knowing that as we finish this gathering this morning, each one of us takes something away with us that changes us just a little bit or a whole lot. It's up to us. And so it is.